Welcome to Mediumship Matters, the podcast dedicated to spiritual growth, connection, and the reality of working with spirit. This season is proudly sponsored by Spirit Social, the brand new online community for the spiritually curious. It's a space where you can connect, share experiences, and access exclusive content without the noise of mainstream social media. With live events, expert insights, and a supportive community, Spirit Social is the place to deepen your journey. Take part in the free 6-month trial by visiting spiritsocial.co or downloading the app from the App Store now. Hello and welcome to Mediumship Matters with me, Hannah Macintyre. And I'm very, very excited to be joined today by another great guest. Today we are talking to Michael Mayo. Hi, Michael. Thank you for joining us.
I am so excited to be here, Hannah. Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited to have you, as you know, because I just chewed your ear off before we hit record. I always start with the same question for every guest, and I would love to know yours. How did you get started in this crazy world of mediumship?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked. I was 18 and I was in massage therapy school, and I had a teacher who was using crystals and cards. And I was like, oh, that's cool. So I Googled the place where I could find something like that. And I stumbled into a place called Awakenings and I met the owner, and he was like, hey, there's this UK medium that's going to be here tonight. You should come. And I was like, what's that? He's gonna do a mediumship demonstration. And I was like, okay, what's that? And he explained it. And I went there. Then he came to me and he said, you're a medium, you need to start developing, and one day you'll be doing what I'm doing. So I went to like a development circle for mediumship. And in my very first reading, it was my turn. And I got up, I gave the person's name, date, how they died, when they died, relationship, passing condition, all those things. And it was like, wow, I guess that guy was right. Okay, cool. So then I went back to my next circle and I got nothing. And then I went back to my next circle and I got nothing. And again, nothing. So I was like, okay, there's something here. I obviously can do what this guy said. I just need to figure out how. How did I do that? And that spent the last almost 20 years to develop. So yeah, that's where I've been.
I love it. I love that you got humbled. No offense, but it is the most humbling journey ever, isn't it? I was like, oh no, he's going to say he's amazing all the time, and I'm going to leave this podcast and cry.
Nope.
So, like when that medium spoke to you and
Yeah.
said, "This is your path," did it feel like a light bulb moment? Did you go, "Ah, there was something," or did you go, "Yeah, jog on, mate, but I'll give it a go"? Or what was your thought process there?
Yeah, my thought process was shock. It was mostly surprise. It was like, wait, what? Because I hadn't had it. You hear these mediums of the past are like, there was a head floating in my, window, and I saw my friend's grandmother, and I'm like, I never had anything like that. There was nothing that led me to believe, except for maybe my desire to know something bigger from a very young age. I mean, my first memory is asking my friend, my family friend, to tell me about God, to teach me about God. And so I've always had this sort of interest in this. And so even before I came into, mediumship, I was in different belief systems and exploring and discovering and trying to find what the truth was. So, yeah, that's there's always been something there, but I never had necessarily those kinds of spiritual experiences.
And you went to a circle. Sorry, not to just deep dive in your
Deep
first
dive, baby.
conversation.
Let's go.
And was it, because I know circles are like kissing frogs, if you want my opinion. You have to
Yeah.
kiss a few to find your prince.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll find was it a great circle straight away? Or, you know, what was it like? Was everyone there already doing it? Did you feel, how was that process?
Yeah, so the circle that I was in was actually led by someone who ended up being my first teacher and later on one of my best friends. But she was teaching kind of a mixture of like psychism and mediumship. So it wasn't like maybe a spiritualist circle or something like that where it was focused just on that. It just happened to be that night was going to be mediumship. And yeah, it was a mixed bag of people, but I remember, getting sort of the reputation as, oh, that's the guy that's good. Like, even though I wasn't, like I had one good reading, and people were like, "Oh, it's the good guy. He's really good. He can get all kinds of information." But no, it's not the case. So yeah, it wasn't like I wouldn't call it, similar to. I mean, UK training and American training can be very, very different. And I was lucky that I had the teacher that I had, because she was very grounded in reality, and she was very good at keeping you from getting, a little big for your britches, and keep you here. And I think that it was exactly what I needed for the first couple of years. So
I love it. I love it. So what did you want to be when you grew up? I mean, obviously medium wasn't on the list because you didn't think you had that. So what was the plan? Did you have a dream?
I think at one point I was going to, I mean, a child, I was like, let me be a veterinarian because I love animals. And so as a child, that's what I was thinking. And then sort of as that like teenage years, I thought I was going to be a pastor, actually. Yeah, because I was very into, again, spirituality, and my first sort of, not first, but my exposure that I kind of sunk my teeth into, someone that said this is the way, was Christianity. And so I was very, very devoutly that way. I mean, I used to sit at home and read the Bible and write sermons and all kinds of things. Like, yeah, I was like, it was kind of got a little bit of a bent for spiritual understanding, and helping others with that, which thankfully that passed on. And mediumship opened the door, not as the answer, but as a tool for understanding and experiencing life and reality in this bigger connection that we have.
I love it. So in some dimension somewhere, there's a version of Michael Mayo who is standing at the pulpit and giving some kick-ass sermons. It's never wasted. I love it. So
I hope so.
were your family religious?
No.
No. So
No.
so I mean that's even probably weirder for them. Then you ended up following that path and then became a medium. Have they enjoyed that journey?
I think they much prefer the me that was a medium, the me that was trying to convince them to be saved from eternal hellfire.
There's still time. You can still
Yeah, exactly.
Doreen Virtue's done it. There's no shame.
I know. We can make the switch at any time.
Still keep selling the stuff though. Still keep earning the money from the residuals.
Obviously.
But
Yeah, obviously.
Okay, so aside from your first reading, which obviously was incredible, spot on, the reading that we all dream about, then then where's it gone? What's happening? What would you say was your first sort of real, actually, no, I really can do this moment that kind of kept you going?
God, that was hard. I mean, honestly, I think it was the fascination with it that kept me going throughout the time period. But honestly, it probably wasn't in for a few years. I'm a very logical, grounded, practical, evidence-based person. Like, that is me. And so I didn't have necessarily all the right answers that sort of motivated me forward. I had to keep running into walls to try to find them. So I'd like go down this path and be like, oh, no, that's not it. This is not proving anything. This is not showing anything. So I kind of had to keep running into things in my early development. And so I'd say it wasn't until, honestly, probably maybe 5 or 6 years into my development where I was like, oh, wait, I can do this. And that was actually when I started going to the UK to develop. And it was around that time, once I think truly where at the moment where I was like, wait a second, I can like do this and I can do this well, was with consistency, was working with Eileen Davies. That was actually the moment. I call her the breaker of chains, because she took all the things I had done up to that point and she just went, oh, you're just trying, you're just doing doot, 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 doot. She just like undid some of the things that I was just doing wrong. And then all those years now could work. Right. And so it was then consistent and accurate, and a lot of growth. And that was also in relation to Gordon. I think Gordon Smith, it was my teacher who showed me what was possible. I had some incredible experiences spiritually with Gordon Smith. over the years when I was working with him. But that sort of made me go from belief to knowing the reality. And then working with Eileen was the thing that goes, okay, so this is all you need to do to adjust. And now it's going to be easier, and now it's going to be consistent. So
That is
yeah,
so cool. I love
yeah.
it. I love it. So you've mentioned you've studied in the US, you've studied in the UK, you've mentioned the differences. What would you say are the differences? And I mean, it's one of the things that I loved about AFC was all the different melting pots of different cultures and different people. What's it like for you from your perspective?
Yeah, I would say the difference is in the United States, sort of the new age sort of world is very much in the mediumship world. Whereas I think in the UK, it's a little bit more split, partly because spiritualism did so well in the UK and lasted to this day, versus in the United States, it's sort of a limping sort of animal, slowly dying, in my opinion. But the other thing with it is that it's in the United States, it was more entertainment based, whereas in the UK, it was more religious. There's like a religious quality to it. And so I think there was a sacredness that was there in the UK version versus the American. And then the last difference I would say is that they weren't as emphasizing the United States evidence as much. It was more so, let me just get as much as you can understand, but then I'm going to move straight to the message, or I'm going to just give you life advice, or I'm going to talk about the divine feminine or something like that. Versus the UK, which, as you know, is very stringent on evidence. And I think the methodology, I don't feel like a lot of the American mediums that I had experienced understood the how or the why it was working. They just knew that it did. And I feel like, the UK and actually the history of spiritualism, they really dove into the why and the how and the mechanisms and that sort of thing. So I find that was a difference. Now, that being said, modern day, the experiences that I have, it's not free of sort of some of the things that were happening in the American mediumship. It sort of bleeds to here. And then likewise, I find sometimes the UK mediumship can be a little bit chokehold and a little bit overly schooled. And you see a lot of mediocre mediumship that comes out of that because of this sort of modern, you must do it this way, you must make it look like this.
Yeah. And also just people always being the same. I think when it's in a church environment, there isn't a lot of freedom to rock up and be yourself so much. And that's, I think, very important in your mediumship. If you're not being you can't build the energy in the same way. So what do you think makes a good medium?
Yeah, well, there's a few things. One thing just to mention from the last thing that you were mentioning, Gordon Smith described when he was going through the churches, and you'd go to a demonstration or a service or something, you never knew what you were going to experience from the mediums because everyone had their own style, everyone did it in their own way, but it was all very evidential and validating. I think we need to go a little bit more back to letting people have breathing room with obviously protections around ethical considerations and being, an ethical medium, not telling people that they're going to die of cancer in 2 years and things like that from the pulpit. But anyway, what do I think makes a good medium is a few things. Giving yourself a lot of time to mature really is a really important thing. You have too many people who think just because I gave a message, I am now a medium. And invariably, I see people who, take a workshop or take maybe the first of our foundation series. And then they go out there and they get a YouTube and they get a TikTok and they're out there giving readings because they were able to do that. Invariably, I find that there comes the time period where your mediumship takes a dip, which it will, because the journey of a medium is very up and down, up and down. And then they end up not only having the pressure of not understanding how their mediumship works, but also now the pressure that they have to do readings and all of this responsibility and looking at them. So it doesn't provide you the freedom to fall on your face like you need to do a million times as a medium. So I would say, number one, taking your time with your mediumship development. The second thing is recognizing that mediumship isn't just about being able to give a message. It's about being able to understand how your mediumship work, your connection, and how it varies. What is it that you need to be able to move into that headspace? And then also recognize it's not you doing this, it's them doing this. And not just like in a thought way, but truly understanding my job as the medium is to surrender, do less, and get out of the way. It's not about getting evidence. It's not about being impressive. It's not about proving survival, even. I believe that it's about handing it over to the spirit. And that's the job of the medium. That's what I think a good medium. They follow this lead of the spirit rather than them trying to go get it, make it happen, which unfortunately, a lot of teachers teach that way.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, when I first learned, I was taught the shopping list,
Yep.
the things you should get in the order. God, that took
Yep.
some undoing.
I'm sure.
Painful. Yeah. Okay. So obviously you're a big expert in how to get the most from your mediumship and how to develop it. And I know that you've put it into your book. So what inspired Spirit Speaks and what do you hope people will get from it?
Yeah, I think by the time that I was approached to write a book, I was already ready to do that. I wanted to always have, I mean, I wrote it in 3 weeks. I wanted to have something I could just hand to someone and say, hey, here's the foundational information that you need to be able to do this work. So it covers a wide gamut of things, including the practices that you'll have to do the rest of the time, like sitting in the power, a little bit of history of what's possible, as well as different stages of development and how we feel our way through the power and feel our way through the communication. And even if you're a little bit further along, it has troubleshooting and all kinds of different things. So for me, it was let me just be able to hand you something, and then you're able to then go, okay, I have everything I need. This is going to be a good, solid start to my development. Obviously, it's not going to replace a development circle and that sort of thing, but it is the information that I would give to anyone. So that was really what the inspiration there.
And it's so funny because I know that you said earlier, UK, there's a lot on the how, but actually that was not my journey. My journey was, but why? And everyone going, well, we don't know. It's just done like this. And me going, but why? But why? So I wish I'd found your book when I was learning because it's exactly like that. Sometimes you just want to understand the mechanics and how it works and then play with it and have the development circle and the learning and the group. And so fantastic. So play on your name, Spirit Speaks. If Spirit could speak through you right now, what do you think they would want to say to everybody?
I think they would want to say a sense of coming back to the roots of what mediumship development and connection was, which is the home circle and sitting in a very safe, loving, supportive environment and handing it over to them and saying, I'm just here, Spirit. Do what you will. I'm going to set aside everything I think I know, everything that I've been taught, everything that I believe. I'm going to set that aside and I'm going to be open to your love, your presence, your power, and allow it to move and inspire you in that safe space. Because that's truly where I have seen the most incredible phenomena with the spirit world. It's been in my home circle. It's less so what we do outside of that. When you go outside of your home circle and you're doing readings for people and things like that, what you're doing is you're actually sort of seeing where your mediumship is at, right? So like when I am going and I'm doing a reading for someone, whatever I'm developed at that point is going to show itself in my reading. But where you get to truly take everything and let it go and just be free and surrendered is in the home circle. And that's where magic happens. That's where I've been able to see ectoplasm in the light. I've been able to see spirit lights. I've had objects move on their own, not just me seeing it, other people, the whole group seeing it. So it's in that environment where I think that we've really lost in a lot of ways. It ends up feeling like this very individual, personal development. I feel like the spirit world really is wanting us to go back to giving them the time, the space, and the openness to let them lead you. So that's what I would think they'd want to say.
I loved it. Fantastic. I know that you're big on surrender and development. So, what does that actually look like when you're giving a message and your brain is screaming, nope, nope, you can't do this. Everybody hates you. You're a fraud.
I think that if my brain was doing that whilst I was trying to surrender, I think my brain would probably win. So when it comes to surrender, it's something that we have to kind of enter in from the very beginning. And part of that is going to be setting aside what I call the three sources of tension, which is desire, distraction, and expectation. So our desire for an outcome, the desire to get it right, the desire to do well, we have to learn to become indifferent about the outcome. We have to not care if it goes well or not. Distraction is going to depend on which kind of form of distraction, but in general, distraction is your thoughts, your biases, and the reaction of your sitter. So we need to be able to set aside those distractions. So there's different ways to fix that. For example, the 90-10 rule that you might have heard of, 90% of your attention being on the spirit and only 10% on the person in front of you. I actually call it the 95-5 rule, but because I think people put too much emphasis on whether someone can take the information or not, and that's going to bring tension into it.
Mhm.
And with expectation, it's thinking that the reading needs to look, feel, or be a certain way, whether that's from what you were taught, whether that's from how it worked for you before. That's actually what screwed me up in my first readings and going back, is I had an expectation that it was going to look, feel, or be a certain way, and that created tension, which then blocked me. So really, tension is the source of our issue. So whatever the tension is, in the example you just gave, it was they hate me, they don't like me, da 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 da, right? So in that instance, the tension source is expectation, it's distraction of our own thoughts, and it would also be a desire, because we'll likely feel the sense that we need to kind of prove or work at it or do something. So you have to kind of take care of all of that prior to, and also recognize whatever that mechanism of surrender that you have within yourself. So I talk about a mechanism of surrender, which is the ability to have that feeling, when you like truly let go, like from that inner feeling place, and you're just totally sort of feels like that.
Yeah.
That you need to learn how to get that feeling without the big sigh, and surrender, soften, relax, and your energy will respond and take your attention to sort of the right space. So that's sort of like the crash course in the how do I surrender, and what are the things that are keeping me from that. So short version, tension causes lack of surrender. The more you can remove the tension, the more free, relaxed, and open you are. And that's when mediumship works the best.
Thank you. I know that was a big question. It's probably very evil of me to put it in there, but for more information, they can buy your book and learn all about it. So, kind of, what would you say, apart from surrender, which I think is the big one? I mean, I remember when I was learning and everyone kept saying surrender, and I was like, but this person is sat in front of me and they are waiting. Like, it's such a process that you have to go through where you face yourself in that gap. What other sort of challenges do you see your students facing?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of it does stem from the things that I just discussed, which is desire, distraction, expectation. But in the development process, you also are going to run into the way that you react when you're vulnerable. So all of us have a way in which we respond to things. And I'm someone who says the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And what you'll find is that your personal development and your mediumship development go hand in hand. They're not the same thing, but they are reflective of one another oftentimes. So people will often start their mediumship development. They'll have some success in the beginning and be like, oh my gosh, I can do this. And then they get a little bit of time under their belt, a little bit of experience, and now they start comparing and judging and all those sorts of things. And now they feel the tension, they feel the pressure. And so then whatever it is that is in you and how you handle that sense of being vulnerable will start to pop out. So perfectionism, self-doubt, self-flagellation, like all of the stuff that we do, like in other instances, will start to show themselves. And as you said earlier, you start meeting yourself, you start running into who you are. And so I think that's one of the other things that we have to work on simultaneously as we're developing, is working on how to handle my vulnerability, how instead of meeting it with this sort of negative perfectionist, have to be the best, da, 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 whatever it is that you do. There's a ton of people too. We instead are going to meet that with compassion, with understanding, with willingness to figure out what's the thing. Why do I feel like I need to be perfect? Why do I feel like I need to try so hard? Why do I feel like I need to beat myself up if it doesn't go well?
Mhm.
So that's the other thing that I would say people have to work on for sure.
I love it. I love it. Now, I know you've kind of alluded to this, like spirit wanting us to go back to the home groups, and there's big shifts in the spiritual community across the world, I think. Well, big shifts in people across the world right now. But where do you think mediumship's going to go over the next decade, especially with everything, that's so digital, the rise of the social media medium, and all of that kind of stuff? What's your opinion there?
I love that. I love that phrase, the social media medium. Um, that is a good question. I don't really know where it will go. I think you will see mediumship in some ways be quite diluted into not so great, but I think that's always been the case because whenever I read, anything from the past, because I love history, anytime I'm reading anything from the past around spiritualism, there's always been the sort of really crappy mediums, the fraudulent mediums, the people that aren't doing a whole lot, and then the ones that are really good and exceptional and have all of these really great experiences. So I don't know that there's going to be much of a difference. I don't think that ever AI will be able to kind of replace a medium or that, spirit will be able to come through that. There are some people trying to build some sort of technologies around like a soul phone sort of thing that I've seen. I don't know if that will happen, but what I tried to do is to insert and create a safe haven at Oak Bridge Institute, which is my online school,
Mhm.
where we raise the standard of mediumship. I think kind of the what do we call it? I mean, the not I'm trying to say Arthur Findlay College, but whatever. I'm going to go ahead and say that. Um, that and the SNU and just spiritualism as an
Mhm.
ism is struggling and isn't doing very well. And I
Mhm.
think your mediumship used to belong just to spiritualism. And as time is going on, mediumship is not connected to an ism. And I think the more that people have an understanding, they're going to move more and more away from that. So I think that that's kind of going to go to the wayside.
Yeah.
I think that our own personal connections and development are going to be the more
Yeah,
important.
absolutely. And I think you have, I mean, because weirdly, obviously, I think because once you interact with somebody online, and obviously I'd inboxed you and said, come on my podcast, but you
Yeah.
start to see more of people, don't you? And then I've seen you kind of calling out some stuff online recently. So I know that you're the ethics, the requirement, the standard is a
Yeah.
real focus and a passion for you, isn't it?
Yeah, well, and then I was blessed by getting to be taught by some of the most incredible mediums we have living today. So my sense of standard is up here. I'm not going to watch someone on the TV just because they're on TV that I think if you throw out J name, LMNOP name, like that's going to be great. I'm used to seeing people give exact street names and addresses. I'm used to seeing people provide first and last name. I've watched these mediums and I was trained by these mediums who go, no, just go and get it, go and do a good job. Now, I'm not saying I get that every single time, but what I am saying is that there is a standard. And when we have that standard high enough, we won't go, oh, well, I can get a, little piece of information and call that mediumship. That's why so many people think that they're mediums and they go online and they're ready because they can do what this low standard on TV is and think that they've arrived, right? And it's
Yeah.
just not the case. If you go back in time, I encourage anyone who's listening to look up Helen Hughes. Look up Helen Hughes. Look at Estelle Roberts. Look at Albert Best. Look at some of these incredible meetings that we had where they name the people in the audience, they name the loved ones, they are able to give such detailed information. I'm not saying that every medium who practices needs to be able to do that. That's unrealistic. But what I am saying is that we recognize that we are always continually having an area of growth. How can I grow? How can I be better? How can I surrender more to the spirit so that they can bring through these incredible possibilities?
That's one of the things I love about it is that I never feel done. Every
Yeah.
time I'm like, it's. I remember Spirit reminding me the other day that when I first started, I said to them, if I could get the relationship right nearly every time, I'll be happy with that. That's what I said. And now I'm like, I only got the relationship and how they died and this, and now I'm not
Yeah.
happy with it at all. And they're like, so yeah, absolutely, completely understand that. What about science and spirit? Because there seems to be a merging and an opening. Where do you think that's going to go? Do you think it's going to help or hinder?
I think is going to help. Um, I think particularly right now there is a lot of interest in consciousness and its continuation. And in particular, there's a doctor called Dr. Sam Parnia, who does a lot of work in consciousness studies and has he works at NYU as a cardiopulmonologist, and he has done two really solid studies trying to prove that the experiences that people have during near-death experiences, or as he calls them, recalled experiences of death, the more we go into this sort of gray zone between life and death, we're recognizing that consciousness does continue on, along with other people like Jeffrey Long, Pim Van Lommel, these other scientists who are also taking this very, very seriously. I mean, there's a whole world of that. You can see that there is scientific evidence to support the continuation of consciousness, and that it's not all just stemming from the brain. The other thing I would suggest people to go look at is the Bigelow Research Institute. They did a competition for the best scientific evidence for survival. And all the people who know anything about this topic wrote in. And the top three are very, very good, as well as so many of the honorable mentions that bring all of this scientific evidence to support the continuation of consciousness, mediumship being also in one of those considerations. So there is a lot of work that's happening right now. In fact, I wish I had all of this when I was much younger, but hey, here we are now, because that was always a thing for me, science and spirituality coming together. So this is something that I'm very interested in, very passionate about. I follow very closely because I think that what's going to help people open their awareness and connect to something bigger is when materialism, which is the belief that everything stems from the material world, gets broken down or is shown that it's not the answer. Yes, that works for certain things like gravity and physics and reasoning and all that sort of thing, but there's something bigger than that. There's our consciousness, and I know as a medium, it's not tied to this brain. And I think the more that people recognize that, it starts to open them up to what are the possibilities here? What does that mean if I'm not just this body? What else is there? And I think that's a really important question for people to ask themselves.
Love it. I'm so glad I asked you that. Okay, so you've talked about obviously giving yourself time. How did you know that you were ready to step out and start being a professional medium?
Yeah, that is a great question. I think that I didn't have this like really clear spot where I was like, I can do this, because I was doing this before. It was one of those things of um, not knowing what you don't know. And so
Yes,
because I
yes.
didn't know what it should look like, quote unquote, when I was ready, I just kind of was figuring it out as I went. And I think when you feel confident, when you not just confident, but like you truly understand your ability and you truly understand your connection to the spirit, and you've given it time to mature and you've done a ton of readings, then maybe I think that that's probably the time. I personally had students who have obviously I've taught thousands of students at this point. And I've had students go, okay, well, do you think I'm ready or whatever? And I kind of trust this sort of inner feeling. I remember with one of my students, she had asked me, do you think I'm ready? I'm like, you just need like 6 months. Like, give yourself this 6 month period more beyond what she'd already developed because she was feeling ready to go out. And that 6 month period passed, and she came back to me and she thanked me because during that 6 month period, she had this breakthrough that suddenly made everything starting to work and click. So I do think having a trusted guide to sort of support you and kind of point you in a direction does help. But obviously, that isn't true for everything. I've heard people who like do their person's beginning course, and because they can make a link, they're like, you're ready, go out there, be a medium, and all that sort of thing. So honestly, I tend to find that somewhere around the 2.5 to 3 year mark, that I find that people are generally giving themselves enough time, assuming that they've gone to weekly circles, that they have continued the development throughout consistently throughout that time. I tend to find that somewhere around there is when that maturity starts to really set in.
And you need to have experience, I think, of
Yeah,
handling grief and people's very difficult
100%.
situations. And this is the thing that keeps me awake at night, is these people that aren't developed, that have never had to, and they're so young, they haven't really had to process what it's like for someone's grief and their loss, and they're out there saying things and you're going, oh, please don't, please, please
Uh,
stop.
yeah.
So yeah, it's such a big thing. Talking of big things, if spirit handed you your next, you wonder where this question's going, not
Yeah, it
where it
was.
might.
I was like,
I know, I know where you come. If spirit handed you your next big thing, what would you want it to be? Is it going to be another book? Is it going to be some other project? What are you hoping is next for you?
that is so interesting. To say that I hope something is next for me is not really how I function with like my spiritual work.
Well,
The
how do
reason,
you do it? How do you
yeah,
do it? And what is next for you?
it's a little bit of this sort of lead my feet spirit, like take me the next step. I don't know where I'm going, and you're gonna just like take me where I'm meant to be. So me thinking about it, being like, I hope it's this, but I would never be mad at a TV show. I think
Yeah.
that would give me a larger platform from which to kind of say the things that I want to say. But as far as what I would do that I have control over is just expanding Oakbridge and adding more to it. Right now, we have a solid mediumship development. We just started to bring in our psychism course. I would like it to also expand out into trance and healing. I know healing is going to be the next thing. That is actually something I should probably say. Like the healing work that I have developed recently is to me very exciting, and that might be maybe a leaning more into like the next big thing, because just the physical results that I get are amazing and I love it. So um maybe that's the next big thing. Maybe it's the being the healer Michael instead of the medium Michael.
Maybe it's all of it. I mean, we
Yeah.
could definitely do with some people on TV who can actually do mediumship.
Yes. That would help.
Shady as hell, I know, but like, it's be nice.
I mean, I won't say that there aren't some that are on TV, but could some of them use more development? Probably, probably. So, I don't know there's anyone on TV right now that I'd be like, you are mind-blowingly amazing. Like if a Gordon or an Eileen were on TV, I'd be like, okay, go
I
watch.
know
Go.
why. Why are they not? Like, it's one of the big mysteries that I'm always asking Spirit about. Like, we know that there's great people. I've seen Gordon live. We know there is. And yeah, anyway, who knows? While we're talking about opinions and
Yeah.
things that you would like to say if you were on TV, if I was
Sure.
to hand you a little soapbox and a loudspeaker right now, what would you be shouting to everybody? What would you want everyone to know?
Oh my God. Okay. I think first would probably have to be um, seeing what mediumship should look like and should like raising that standard is probably what I would do, and what I would want it to be first is being like, see what's possible. That's actually mediumship versus kind of some of the things that we see. I would also be probably trying to, because I'm thinking like, how would I feel if I was like had that sort of space? And I think it would be minimizing harm as much as possible, that because out there right now there's so much fraudulence, there's so much things going on that I think will create more harm. And so I think my big thing would be trying to minimize harm as much as possible by educating people on what is genuine and what's not genuine, and also probably sharing some of the really amazing genuine experiences that I have experienced to show them what is possible when you sort of set aside the ego part of trying to be someone. So
Would
yeah.
you mind sharing a genuine experience with us now and telling us a story that springs to mind of something that you've witnessed or done yourself that you're proud of?
Yeah, I mean, I can share. So actually, there was a time that we were sitting for table phenomena. So we had a table group. So for those who don't know, table tipping is where you use a little table and you put your hands around it, like in the old Victorian seances, and the table will hopefully start to move, tap out messages, etc., etc. We had success very early on. And we always sat in the light so everything could be seen. You could make sure nobody was doing anything crazy. And in one of our one of the first few sessions that we had, we asked them if they'd ever be able to produce any physical phenomena. outside of the table phenomena? And they said yes. And we said, how many sittings? And they said 12. And so we completely forgot that they had said that. And we just continued carrying on, sitting, whatever. Then one day we go to the table. The table moves to let us know that they're there. And then, but the atmosphere felt very different. It felt very thick and very dense. And they weren't suddenly moving the table and communicating with us. They just let us know that they were there. And it started to shift and change and shift and change. And then all of a sudden, we start seeing me. It was three of us, me and this other guy. We start seeing what looks like a hot, steamy coffee smoke, a steam, if you will, coming from our solar plexus and like going up into the air. And we're just watching this, all of us like astonished, like, what the hell is going on? Because we can clearly see this smoky, steamy stuff rising from our solar plexus. And we're just shocked. And we're kind of like, what the heck is that? I'm like, I think this is ectoplasm, but I don't know, because this is the first time I'm seeing this. And then all of a sudden, over the table, we started to see these tiny pins of light start to appear. And it was sort of like fireflies, like in this space where you could sort of see all of these beautiful little pins of light starting to come. And what was interesting is I remember looking at the shape and form of these little lights, and they weren't just like lights, they actually had shape and form. And I don't know if you ever saw the movie Avatar, but there's like these little seeds that sort of like do this sort of jellyfishy movement.
Yeah.
That's what it looked like to me, but just very tiny and very bright. And so I was looking at them going, thinking that in my head. And my friend to the side of me goes, you know what they look like? They look like those things from Avatar. And I was like, oh my God, you're totally seeing what I'm seeing right now. This is so validating. And then it just came and then it just went. And we went back later and we counted back the amount of sittings. And it was in 12 sittings that we had that happen. So it really validated the intelligence of the spirit world, and also seeing something that we could not have faked. None of us expected that to happen. And it was a really powerful experience to have genuine physical phenomena brought on by the spirit. And so for me, that was a really, really cool experience to have.
Do you know, it's so lovely because obviously I know Jenny well, as I know
Yeah.
you know Jenny Jaranis, and we've spent so long talking about fraudulent
Yeah.
physical mediumship. It's actually really lovely to hear someone talk about real physical mediumship. So you weren't burnt by your ectoplasm because the lights were on
No,
then, Michael,
no,
no?
not at
And
all.
nobody unrolled a Hessian wrap and dangled it from their mouth.
No,
No?
no, that did not happen.
Yeah. Um, yeah, sorry, I love that story. Thank you so much for sharing that. I could really feel the magic of it. Right, I've got just a couple more quick fire questions for you because I always like to end with a bit of fun. If you could only use one crystal for the rest of your life, what would it be and why?
Zero crystals. I wouldn't use any.
Must be psychic. Don't bother with them at all.
Yeah.
Okay. If you could instantly master one non-spiritual skill, what would it be and why?
Oh, hold on. I got this. I know I have this. Let's go with horseback riding.
Cool.
I'd love to be an incredible horse rider. So, yeah.
Yeah, that does always look really cool when they can do that. I'm going to add that to my mental list. If your spirit guides had a theme song, what would it be?
If my spirit guides had a theme song, um, they would probably be. Hold on, I'm trying to think of the name of that song. Hold on, I know the song. I'm just trying to think of what it is called. Oh, it's an old song from like, because I'm ancient internally. It's from like, I don't know, the 1930s or something like that. And it's called I'll Walk Beside You.
Oh,
That would be their theme song.
that's lovely. Um, if you were a tarot card, what tarot card would you be and why?
The Fool. Because I am a fool. I don't know anything and I'm just walking off a cliff. That is me. The
As
more
the
the
fool's
more I think
archetype.
I know, the less I realize I know. So yeah.
Okay, last one. You can have dinner with three people, living, past, famous, not famous. Who'd be at your table?
For sure, Gladys Osborne Leonard, because I absolutely adore her, who's a medium of the past. I would probably have Helen Hughes also. Apparently, I like mediums. And I probably would throw in Jesus if Jesus ever existed, just to be like, hey, bro, what did we get wrong here? And what did you actually try to teach?
That would be a long dinner.
Yes,
Um,
it would.
I love it. I love it. So, thank you so much for your time today. I've loved talking to you. I wish this interview was twice as long. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so on all my social media, it's all Medium Michael Mayo, Mayo. And you can also find me on my website, Medium Michael Mayo, and then also my online school that I teach with Megan Elisa Medium, who you might know from TikTok.
Yes.
And we are doing, we teach at oakbridgeinstitute.org, and that's where you can learn with us.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Michael.
And it was a pleasure. Thank you.